So I spent 10 years in university building a career for myself, and of course hoping that after graduation from my last degree, my PhD, that I would find something that I would love, find something that makes money, so that I had dreams about buying a home and settling in my city as well. But throughout my degree, what I realized that there was a lot of gaps in the education, and you would think that after a degree like that I would have everything I need, that I'd be equipped with everything I need to build a career for myself. But I found that it wasn't true. So eventually, after my PhD, I did a postdoc fellowship, and I left the academic pillars to start my career in corporate and later on in the business world, and I haven't looked back since. So what I want to share with you today are 7 crucial lessons that I learned after leaving academia. 7 crucial lessons that academia did not teach me, that I learned later on in life, and if I hadn't learned them, they would have actually been detrimental to my career. Lesson number 1 is how to deal with chaos and uncertainty. In the classroom, I had a lot of structure around the curriculum that the university set out. I was taught what to learn, what to read, when to learn it, when to read it, because the final exams were coming out on a particular day. And actually, if you think about it, this is actually not very different from childhood and adolescence, when your parents planned most of your days and they told you what you were going to do, where you were going to be, to make it convenient for them to take care of you. It's not too different from that. And when it's happening, is you have this comfort zone around you where things are planned for you, and that if you left that comfort zone, it'd be very difficult because of all the chaos and uncertainty that is out in the real world. So one thing that I developed, a lesson that I developed after leaving the academic pillars, was the principles and strategies on how to deal with chaos and uncertainty. Because out in the business world, whether or not you work for someone or you're starting your own business, you're out in the real world, and in the business world, the marketplace is always evolving, constantly turning, and everything outside of you have no control of. Right? So the first lesson is a crucial lesson for your career, is to learn how to deal with uncertainty and chaos. Lesson number 2 is how money works. Formal education, college education, is what I call certificate optimized education, because the goal of the academic system is to crank students through to get their degree, which is their certificate. And after that certificate, they're expected to go and make something of their lives, but they aren't taught how to navigate their careers. So inside of education, a lot of college graduates who finish their degrees and go on getting some work experience, a lot of them end up making average salaries and incremental raises in their salaries as time goes on. And so we're taught that we feel when we graduate that we're boxed into industry average standards or salary standards that are commensurate with the industries, and we don't feel like we have a lot of control over them. In addition, we're taught how to chase after average salaries, spend a lot of time chasing after average salaries. We're taught that maybe valuing money is a bad thing, because we're taught that having too much money changes you. We're taught that we can't be greedy, we can't want money, because then that means that we're not good people. But at the same time, we don't understand how money works. How is money exchanged? How do you get paid your worth? And how is it that some people don't have the academic credentials, yet they're paid a lot of money? How does that happen? Right? What is it that initiates that exchange of value in the marketplace, where you exchange money for something that you put out there? How does that all happen? And so one of the most important things that you can understand is the flow of money. Where value goes is where you can exchange money. Right? So one of the most important, crucial lessons that I learned after graduation in the business world is how to get paid your worth by understanding value exchange. Lesson number 3 is how to think for myself. Throughout every single class, throughout every single one of my degrees, I was given a curriculum. 80-20 of my time, the 80%, was spent on meeting the requirements for that curriculum. It was spent in the classroom, where my schedule was pretty much dictated to me. I was told when class was started, where to go, when to go, what to study, what to learn. And a lot of that was a lot of structure. I wasn't given a lot of wiggle room to really think for myself in terms of, why am I learning this? Why is it important to me? What do I make of it? And how do I exchange it for value in the marketplace? So one of the most important things you can do is to learn to think outside of those structures. Structures are there to give you confidence. They're there as constraints to give you frameworks for how to develop your own belief system. But it doesn't mean that you have to follow them. It doesn't mean that you are handcuffed to them. You are your own person. There's nothing more empowering than to develop your own belief system and to be able to think for yourself, so that you can make decisions that are aligned with your values. So one of the most crucial lessons I learned was exactly that, how to think for myself. Crucial lesson number 4 is career development. Now, I can only think of 3 top reasons why someone would want to enter the academic world from talking to a lot of folks. The first top reason is that they have a hope to build a better career. The second reason is that sometimes they're trying to satisfy their parents' desires for them. You know, their parents want them to go to school and maybe even to get a specific degree, and because it's important to them and they want their children to have what they didn't have. So that's another reason. The third top reason is that some people are genuinely interested in that subject matter. So they enroll in the school, and because they want to gain that knowledge that they know they didn't have. So but regardless of which pockets that someone begins with, the most important thing is your intent, right? Everybody from each of those pockets of reasons why they enter the school system will experience a different culture, right? They have a very different experience in the learning environment. And the only reason why that is the case is because of intent. The reasons why each of those pockets of groups of students enter the education system is for a different reason. So their intent is very different. But regardless of the intent, the academic school system places such a heavy emphasis on things like your GPA, measuring where you are in terms of your class averages, class sizes, all of these metrics in terms of quote-unquote learning metrics, right? But there's not a whole lot of emphasis on career development. And what ends up happening is that, sure, you learn the material, and how well you learn it depends on your motivation and, of course, your intent of going in, and maybe a little bit of natural skills and talents learning in the academic setting. But the thing is, once you are done your degree, the academic system, right, their involvement in your life is pretty much finished, and they just say go and make something of your life. So there's not a lot of emphasis on how to develop a career, how to navigate a career outside of the academic pillars, how to start thinking about a career, and answering most important questions of, who am I and what's important to me? So the fourth crucial lesson that I learned for myself outside of academia is how to develop a career. So if you're watching this right now and that last point, career development, really interested you, and you're wondering how do I develop a career? Maybe you are in a situation where you are quite a few years into your career, but you're wondering how to get to that next level, then I have a special training for you. Go to careerrevisionist.com/masterclass. I'll put that link in the show notes below. It's careerrevisionist.com/masterclass. And it's a special training that I put together just for you to show you how to apply these principles so that you can develop your career the way you want to. Lesson number 5 is long-term thinking. You know, when I was in my PhD, that was when I started to notice that something was missing. All along, I was taught to focus on my coursework, to focus on the now, how to handle my coursework, how to handle my busy schedule, to make sure all my assignments were completed, to make sure I'm prepared for the exam coming up in only 2 weeks' time or a few weeks' time, right? It was the heavy focus was on the now. But there's something to be said about focusing on the future, long-term thinking, because when you only focus on the present, then the future becomes chaotic. And the opposite is also true. If you only focus on the future, then the present becomes chaotic. So there's something to be said about thinking about all different time dimensions. It's important to think about the now, but it's also important to spend time projecting and thinking about our future, because that's the only way you can design the future that you want. And this is about mastering your professional destiny, because you're only in school for a certain period of time. It's finite. Once that is finished, what happens next? So that was something I noticed during my PhD, towards the end of it when I was about to graduate. It was exciting times, yes, but it was really scary because I realized that I didn't have the skill set to think about the future. I didn't even have the framework on knowing how to think about the future. Because sometimes it's hard enough to plan a half a year out, never mind 5 to 10 years out. So it's very difficult because I didn't have the frameworks in place to think that far out. So the 5th important lesson I want to share with you is how to develop the skills for long-term thinking. Lesson number 6 is communication skills. Throughout all of my degrees, the goal of academia, the goal of learning was to get good grades. Right? And especially during graduate school and graduate studies, you write articles, you publish papers, you maybe even write a book or contribute a book chapter. And then the academic vernacular makes it really difficult for people outside of the academic pillars to understand. But here's the thing, the goal of writing, the goal of communicating is not to demonstrate our knowledge. It's not to become an authority. The goal of communication is to spread ideas, to spread thoughts in a way that your listeners can understand. And I understand that when I was in my PhD, I was writing for other scientists, I was writing for other contributors, so they were the only ones reading my work, and so therefore the academic vernacular made sense. But when you leave the academic pillars, when you graduate, all of a sudden now you're communicating to a much broader audience. Right? So one of the most crucial skills that you can learn is how to communicate in a way that a broader audience can understand. And this might mean changing your vernacular or language, but it's also getting a firm understanding of what it means to communicate. Right? Communication skills can be learned. And if that's something you're interested in, I invite you to watch my YouTube video. I wrote a YouTube video, I recorded a video some time ago about how to communicate better for effective communication video. I recommend that you watch that. Another one that I would recommend is one on articulation. So if you want to be a speaker from stage, or if you just want to articulate better ideas in the way that your listener can understand and have an influence on them, then I invite you to watch that video as well. So 2 of them, one on communication and one on articulation. So the 6th lesson is communication skills. And finally, lesson number 7 is imagination. Imagination is very important. I mean, in school, in the formal education system, there's so much to learn. All of this historical data, and you spend a lot of hours, and at least I did, cramming data and cramming information in your mind because you want to do well on the exam. Because that is what's going to allow you to graduate and allow you to keep your scholarships or whatever that is, right? And so cramming data into your mind becomes a programmed behavior. But the thing is, it leaves very little to the imagination. And imagination is crucial to have the success that you want. If you have ever read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, it all starts with imagination. What you imagine inside of your internal world then exhibits itself into your behaviors, and your behaviors become your reality. So if you want to learn more about that, I invite you to read my article. Recently, I published an article in Forbes magazine that breaks down the science behind Think and Grow Rich and how it all starts with imagination. So I'll put a link to that article in the show notes below, and I invite you to read that and learn about how imagination is crucial to your success. So those are the 7 things that the academic system did not teach me that would have been detrimental to my career had I not learned them after graduation. So comment below. I'd love to hear from you. What did you learn? Which thing in particular resonated with you, and which one are you going to implement? As well, if you liked what you heard, give me a thumbs up as well, and give me a like, and remember to ring that bell to receive notifications each time I upload a new video. And I look forward to hanging out with you next time.